I want to share a notion with you all here today, and that notion is that your best life, the version where you see yourself living successfully in terms of health, wealth, love, is on the other side of failure. I'm going to explain why in a second. I'm an actor. I act for a living. That's how I make my money. And I wasn't very proud to say this a very long time ago. In fact, it got so bad that sometimes my parents' friends would come over and they'd ask me, "So what do you want to do when you finish school?" And I would say, something to do with politics and acting. And it disheartened me when they all were receptive to the political part and completely disregarded the acting part and said, "Oh, you have a politician in the family, good for you guys." It did nothing for my confidence. I moved around schools a lot. I went from an 844 system to an American international system to a British system to, again, another British system school with a different school year. And through all that moving, I felt like I lost my place. I was doing a lot of catching up. I worked really, really hard at being average. I would move to a new school, and the curriculum I had learned in the previous school was irrelevant. They were learning things in a different way, and I completely didn't understand, and I was always catching up. That was my story. So my parents, I went to boarding school. I would go home, and they would say, "So what are your grades? Let's see your grades." And they would see a C, a B, letters on a piece of paper. Letters that didn't reflect how much effort I thought I put. I would see a C, and I thought I put A+ effort to get that C. So with all that moving around, school became about social survival for me. You're growing through puberty. You know, you like boys and the popular girls, the nerdy girls, the losers. It was just a social survival mess for me. And that was my experience. So studying fell short. When it came to academics, I didn't do so well. Fast forward to my A-levels. I came here to Brookhouse, and I ran for house captain, reluctantly, and I was nominated. And that sort of started my leadership journey, the journey where I thought, oh, actually, I do have something to bring to the table. So I was living in this weird, ironic place where I was succeeding in terms of leadership, and I was house captain, and I was doing round square, and I was failing academically. I realized I had a really bad problem with failure when I went to see a guidance counselor at one of the schools that I went to. And she told me, I entered her office and she told me, "How are you?" And I said, "I'm good." And she said, "What brings you here today?" I don't know if you've ever been to a guidance counselor's office, but their tone is very somber. And I said, "I just failed a math test, and I don't know, I just feel like I'm failing." And I started telling her my life story, and I completely started crying, and I said, "I'm feeling so much pressure to succeed and do well. And it's not like I'm not trying, but there was a disconnect between what I would bring home and the way that I came home." So my parents would see one thing, I felt a different thing. So failure, every time I failed, every test I failed, I would recede into a corner. I would slowly disappear, and I would say, "I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough." The guidance counselor then told me I need to continue and follow up and do more sessions. And I told her, "No, thank you." And she gave me some recommendations for when I go home. And I took that letter and I ripped it up outside her door and I threw it in the trash and I was like, "I was never here, thank you." And so I'm in my A-levels. I'm not doing well academically. It comes time for my exams, my final A-level exams. And the week my exams were starting, I got a rejection letter from every single university that I had applied to. Every single one. The week my exams were starting. And I thought, this is the reason I'm doing my exams, is so that I do go to college and I do move on with my life. But that seems like it's not going to happen for me. And for a very long time, I didn't have it in me to wake up. I didn't have it in me to get up and go about my day and come to school and listen to about how all my colleagues were getting into this university and how they were on standby for this university and I had nothing. And so I gathered myself and I came and I wrote my exams. But I was already defeated mentally before I even picked up my pen. Before the examiner said start, I had failed. I had checked out. And I said, well, this is the end of the road for me. But that wasn't the case. So I finished my exams and I went home, and luckily because of my leadership and how well I did in terms of my leadership skills and the encouragement that I received from the teachers here, I was nominated for a people-to-people program that I took, and I went for theater, film, and television in California. And I could not believe that I had bought so many lies about myself and my capabilities and about failure in general. I met a man whose job it was to stand in line. He stood in line and got paid, and that's how he paid his bills. And I said to myself, you can be anything. It doesn't matter if you pass or you fail. Your effort will always be met at the end of it. So I'm not telling you go and fail your exams. I'm telling you, if you try and you don't do well, it's okay. There is a life after it. Your best life, in fact, I would venture to say. Because you had to pick yourself up and get creative with how you wanted to succeed. I was the weirdest failure because I would fail, but I would still think I was going to get all this money and I was going to be so successful and I was still going to be an actor in Hollywood and I was still going to do what I wanted to do. But I just didn't know how I was going to get there because I was currently failing. So the vision I had wasn't taken away from me. And that's the message I want to share with you all here today, is that you can fail, but you can grow from that failure. So fail fast and get it out of the way so that you stop taking it personal, as a personal attack on your character, because that's not the case. That's not what it's there for. It's there to teach you, to pick yourself up, and to move forward. Thank you.